Hello, and welcome to the Emotional Endurance Movement. This week's episode is dedicated to your one friend who always has something to say about certainty. There's only two things in life that are certain: death and taxes, beer and ponies, penguins and light fixtures, art and criticism, whales and canned goods, flies and honey, pine cones and sugar. You know the one.
Oh, I know the one.
Hello, and welcome to the Emotional Endurance Movement, the only mental health variety show that actually cares about you growing your emotional endurance. Thank you so much for joining us and taking a little bit of time to take care of yourself. I'm your host and Chief Coping Officer, Laurie Sharp Page, and here with me is my co-host, our behaviorist at large, and someone who can't get their hair done before their really important event and is now learning how to cope with it. It's Crimson McDonald.
Howdy, y'all.
This week on the Emotional Endurance Movement, we're talking about the feeling of uncertainty and the coping skill of embracing the absurdity. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Now it is time to move to our insight of the week. Crimson, what do you got going on for us on the insight of the week?
Well, this week I bring a quote from one of my favorites, Neil deGrasse Tyson. And he says, "The universe is under no obligation to make sense to you." And I found this fascinating for two reasons. One, he was featured in the podcast Diary of a CEO, and he talked about how we could be living in a simulation. I will let you go to that space to unpack that. But he was top of mind, and this quote came up, and I thought it was great because I truly, and I mean this as an entitled human, kind of thought it was supposed to make sense, Lori.
I love this quote. I know. I think we can tell ourselves these stories around certainty and things should make sense and be very binary or cut and dry. And we do that to protect ourselves. But yeah, as an existentialist, I have leaned in hard to the fact that there is no inherent meaning. There is no inherent sense. It is all up to us and our individual experiences to make meaning out of that and everything else that goes along with it in whatever way that we will. So this is like near and dear to my personal spiritual beliefs. What's interesting, I love Neil. Neil came to my high school when I
Oh,
was a
cool.
sophomore, and he came and he spoke. And my friend, I'll never forget this. My friend raised his hand. It was during the question and answers time. He raised his hand and he said, "Excuse me, and I'm so sorry for asking this, but do you have any pictures of Uranus?"
Oh, no.
It was so great. It was a highlight
No.
moment of my life. Everyone laughed so hard. Well, Neil laughed. We
I
all
bet he
laughed. I
did.
think my friend might have got his wrist slapped on that one a little bit. But it was kind of, how do I say this? He was a mischievous one anyway. So
Amazing.
I've loved Neil for a long time, and I've had personal experience with him and hearing him speak. And I remember walking away from his session and really having this sense of awe around there being so much more to space and physics and even time. We talked a lot about time and the perception of time, particularly, that we just don't really know or fully understand or haven't unpacked yet. And I honestly, for a long time, this sort of stuff scared me. I think existentialism can feel a lot like nihilism for people. Like if
Right.
there is no meaning, then there is no meaning. And there are certainly a lot of existentialists that travel down that path of nihilism, and many more, including myself, that have found themselves on their path and then come back around to a greater sense of embracing the absurdity of not knowing
Right.
and being really okay with that. It's actually made me so much more humble in my interactions day to day, because like I don't know what's going on. None of us know what's going on.
I think it is interesting culturally, though, how this varies or has a variation between cultures, right? Americans really, we have an entitlement problem. And I don't mean that from like a political privilege. I mean, we were raised, especially our generation, to believe that there was like this linear way that the world works, right? And that if you do this, then there's this. And it was always these conditional logical statements that dictated how we perceived outcomes. But that's not how it works
No, it's
at all.
absolutely not how it works. And reflecting back, it's probably been a couple of months, but one of our episodes, we talked about how entitlement is privilege without gratitude.
Right.
And I wanted to go like disagree with you when you said that Americans have an entitlement problem because my innate was they have actually a control problem and a perspective problem. I think that's actually, if we look at that equation for what entitlement is, I think that's really the same thing that we're talking about.
Right.
And I do believe that there has been a lot of mythos built up around what typical normal life looks like. And it is all truly myth. People haven't been sitting in cubicles for hundreds, thousands of years. That's been 10, 20, 30, 40, maybe 50 years. And what does that mean about our understanding? Probably longer than 50 years. See, here I am with time. What is time, Neil? It doesn't make sense to me.
Neil probably has a very good opinion about
Yeah,
that.
Neil's like, let me pull out the old chalkboard and let's
Yes,
go. Oh, please,
exactly.
Neil, no.
Oh, I agree. It is an interesting phenomenon, and it's fascinating when you talk to people from other countries that don't necessarily expect the best. Thank you, Neil, for bringing that to the table.
Well, and to your point, it is a known cultural difference that Americans are extremely optimistic. Some people find that to be an off-putting characteristic.
I was with my friend from Jamaica, and he was talking about how it's partially because of our ambition, right? Again, it's this conditional if then ideology that we promote in America because it used to be true. If you spend 30 years at a company, you will benefit. If you go to college, then you will get a high paying job. This is the first generation that will not see the opportunities that their parents had.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have to learn how to cope with
And
it.
it doesn't make sense how we had such a great thing and then people pulled up the ladders. So that's another great connection back to Neil because I think America is under no obligation to make sense to us.
Right.
But I take great issue to that as a taxpayer.
That's a different investment.
Interesting insight of the week. Always excited to see Neil.
Yeah, I love him.
Now it's time for a word for our feeling of the week: uncertainty. Look, we're all uncomfortable with uncertainty. The way that we are uncomfortable with a noise in a house at night, like when your smoke detector just keeps chirping on and on and on. It's not necessarily immediately dangerous or urgent, although do change that smoke detector batteries. But it's the not knowing about what might happen that makes it impossible to ignore. So what do we humans do? Well, we use our powerful minds to fill in the gaps. We assume the worst. We make up an ending just to have one, and we cling to it, even if the ending we make up is terrible, because a terrible story feels better than no story at all. This is how wired we are for resolution. We choose a bad answer over an open question every single time. Uncertainty is not the enemy. It's a condition under which we all live and feel. You don't know how things are going to turn out any day, any moment, but right now. Uncertainty means that the story is not over. It means that the ending is still being written, and that's not a threat. That's the whole point to being alive. So your moment is this. Name the uncertainty you're white knuckling through right now, and then ask yourself, what if I do not need to know how this ends to trust that I can handle whatever happens? And then sit with it, because uncertainty is a feeling, not a problem to solve. It is a condition in which you are surviving, and you already have been surviving. So don't push it away like it's something that you're not familiar with. We're all familiar with uncertainty, and we can choose to have a healthier relationship with it because of that. And that's all from this week's feeling of the week: uncertainty. Now it's time for this week's show and tell, where we're going to talk about what it looks like to live in uncertainty. Crimson, what do you got for me?
All right, I think this is something everyone can relate to. Gas prices. I mean, am I alone? There's so much happening in the world right now, but gas prices seems to be the most unavoidable issue in my life. I filled up the other night. My son was out too late. He wasn't supposed to ask me for a ride home. Get in my car, out of gas. I had to drive like out of town to get gas. Paid $5.60 a gallon. I mean, it was like $80 to fill up my car. That level of uncertainty when you have a family of four with small businesses, it's extremely difficult to deal with. And part of me is like, I mean, am I just privileged and this is the consequence of our reality, and I'm lucky I can pay for it, so just put it in. But the reality is that we are in an uncertain time. They're saying gas could be $8, $9 this summer. Our family's been struggling with it. We don't know. Should we plan vacation? Can we afford to go anywhere this summer? My mom's only 15 minutes away, but like, how often am I going to be able to drive out to see her? Thank God we live in a small community and can walk everywhere. I don't know what American families are doing. And we're living in very uncertain times. There's no like end in sight coming. There's no message about it. Nobody's saying it's going to get better. And I think for planning for a family, this is just really uncertain territory. I think even my mom, who's so cynical, she's like, I mean, it can't get to $8 a gallon. And I'm like, but the economists, all the experts, even the people that work for the Trump administration say it will. There's nobody saying it won't. And I think our brains are just kind of trying to turn off the reality.
Yeah, my first time putting $5 gas in my car was a sobering experience because everything, almost everything that we consume is touched by petrochemicals in some way, whether it be from manufacturing, transportation, financing. Our economy is really built on petrochemicals. And so I think it is pretty certain we will have $8, $9 gas at some point this summer.
Yeah.
And to what we were talking about earlier, I think that a lot of our European friends and friends from other parts of the world are like, well, hello, welcome. I mean, we've had $2.50 gas for a long time. Cheap oil has been a big part of what's built our country, but it is going to be extremely destabilizing. And my understanding is, based off of current macroeconomics and trends, is that if oil gets to over $200 a barrel, it will just completely stop the economy on a global scale as we know it.
Right.
And then we're really into uncharted waters. It's super concerning. It's bizarre to watch a catastrophe play out in slow motion and to question the legitimacy of a catastrophe of this size. And also, I mean, I want to say like the confusion of it too. It's hard to understand why choices are being made. They don't seem like rational, good faith choices. And so we are all lining up to suffer the consequences of that, of which is the way it goes. I mean, there's no, that would be entitlement to act like we were above receiving these consequences when they're having global impacts. It sucks. It just
does
sucks.
suck. It just sucks. I mean, do we go on vacation? Can we afford it? If we book something now, will we be able to afford it when it's time? It's just so hard to know.
So hard to know. And again, I mean, we're going to see this ripple through. If people aren't going on vacation this summer, well, then there's all other businesses that are going to be impacted as well. And the exponentially increasing timeline. You told me the other day, if things were solved the other day and everything went back to business as usual, they're forecasting 3.5 years.
Yep. To rebuild.
Until there's resolution. So, I mean, this is extremely uncertain. I mean, what can we do?
Right.
Make the best decisions that we can with the information we have right now.
Consciously
And you're
cope.
right. A staycation is looking more and more likely.
Yeah, I think for a lot of, I'm talking upper middle class families, I think a staycation's all that's optional now.
Yeah. Well, that was a doozy. Right before we got on to record, Crimson handled me another doozy. And I have to take it because the doozy she gave me has been one I've been really working on coping with in a way that isn't alarmist. And that's the cruise ship with the hantavirus.
Ah.
Yeah. So what concerns me about this, besides everything, the whole shebang is concerning.
The whole shebang.
What concerns me personally about this is how quick my brain was to reach towards certainty when this first popped up about 2 weeks ago? It's probably, by the time this airs, probably about a month out since I first read something. And I was like, my brain immediately was like, COVID, I need to get toilet paper. I need to get you know what I mean? Like, it's going through like the list and stuff. And I was like, okay, like, I know that this feels a lot like COVID, right? But there's no certainty that this will be. And I will say, from staying up to date with the public health and epidemiologist on Reddit, which hopefully they're good. I mean, they're better than the ones that we don't have on a governmental scale, but that's neither here nor there. So I've been actively trying to manage this extreme anxiety through what I've been lovingly calling my own anxious awareness, which is This makes me anxious, and I want to be aware of it. I don't want to necessarily make any snap judgments about it or change any behaviors around it. I just want to be aware of it. And I am keeping up with the World Health Organization, but since we went this last go around, a lot of our systems have been reduced down, and that creates more uncertainty, and it's been hard to grapple between these extremes. Now, I will say there was a part of me that was really upset I wasn't able to take my family on a Disney cruise this summer. I just had it in my head that I was going to do that this summer. And I was really down in the dumps, and then the hantavirus stuff came out, and I was like, you know what? That's okay.
Yeah.
I can miss the cruise. I'm okay. And then I've been following all those public health people and epidemiologists, and they're telling me that generally speaking, cruises are not where you want to be. So maybe we're not even doing a cruise ever. But in the midst of all this uncertainty, there's been some certainty. Like, we're not going on a cruise this summer. And I didn't already buy like a million things of toilet paper. I do have them in my Amazon cart. So there's that. But that's as far as I've gone. And I don't know. I am concerned about it. It does seem like it transitions differently, but it has a lot of the 2020 vibes, and it's been hard not to feel that trauma. And it's weird because in 2020 I was pregnant. It was really scary to be pregnant during that period of time. I was pregnant again in 2021. I signed up to do it another round. That's quite something. And it's been like, oh gosh, like I feel so strong in my life because I got through that period of time. And also like now if this happens again, we have young kids that are outside the womb, and that feels impossible.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm doing okay, but it has been really triggering for me. So when you asked me to talk about it and I got a little sassy about it, that's why.
Well, I mean, it's funny. I have several text threads that have stood the test of time since the pandemic when everyone was getting locked down. And on all of those threads, we've been talking about it because, it's obviously a huge trigger. I will say, I feel extremely prepared. Unlike last time, I've seen a pandemic. Now, this one, if it becomes a pandemic, we're talking 40% mortality. This is not something to joke around with. But I learned which experts I kind of trust and whose voices to listen to. And so I feel like a little bit more prepared for pandemic 2.0. And I think it's inevitable it's going to happen again. But
I mean, there is certainty in that. There have been pandemics throughout time.
But I don't think this is going to be it. Laurie, I don't think this is going to be it.
Okay.
I
All
hope.
right. Now a word from our coping skill of the week, embracing the absurdity. I want you to consider the following. You're a person on a planet hurtling through space at 67,000 miles per hour. You have opinions about fonts. You have cried over reality television. You once stood in front of an open refrigerator for 45 seconds, hoping something would tell you what to eat. And you're stressed about whether you handled that email correctly. This is the human experience. It is objectively, cosmically, profoundly absurd. And one of the most underrated coping skills in existence is the ability to zoom out far enough to embrace the absurdity. Embracing the absurdity is not toxic positivity. In fact, it's often about playing up and emphasizing the things that are really outside your control. It's not about pretending things are fine. It's the recognition that life is simultaneously deeply serious and completely ridiculous. And you're allowed to respond to both. It's not about dismissing this absurdity, but about embracing it, not fighting it, allowing it to give you a little bit of insight or humor. Absurdity is not avoidance. It's about taking a different perspective and seeing the full situation for as ridiculous as it often is. And that's all for this week's Skill of the Week, embracing the absurdity. Now time for this week's game, which we're calling Make It a Catastrophe, and we're going to practice how much we can catastrophize and then have the other person help us embrace the absurdity of it all. I'll go ahead and go first. Crimson, you woke up with a fever.
I woke up with a fever and had no other symptoms. I'm not sure if it's non-Hodgkin's or Hodgkin's, but a fever with no symptoms, waking up, especially if it's at like 3 a.m. with cold sweats, absolutely some form of blood cancer.
You've still got 10 more seconds.
Oh, a lot more could happen in 10 more seconds, but If it's not that, then it's probably definitely some form of staph infection or internal infection.
Okay, well, you covered a lot of clinical ground there that I wasn't necessarily anticipating. But I do want to say the absurdity of us all is that you could just have a fever because you are ovulating. It could be completely hormonal and normal, and just a change in your body that is a sign that is actually functioning normally. Not necessarily, though, because I'm not a doctor. Don't take my medical advice. I'm just trying to show Crimson that we could bring a little absurdity into the way with the fact that sometimes our body takes care of itself by raising our temperature, and we're not necessarily sick or dying. That's the absurd part.
All right, Laurie, so I get to throw one at you.
Yeah.
You launch a business and people start talking about a recession.
Well, if there's not going to be any liquidity, what's really the point of doing any of this? I mean, if you can't sell something, then like what's the value? Because our capitalistic society says that you should only have a business if you have something of value to sell, and then you can make capital to spend into other assets and then grow your empire to be a billionaire. But if you don't want to do that and you just want to help people and make a little bit of money so that you can live comfortably and change the world with a great idea, it doesn't necessarily feel like the most encouraging time to do that when everyone's already really stressed out about money and really concerned about the fact that they're unhappy with their lives as they are and don't really have a lot of hope that things could be differently. And so sometimes it really seems like maybe if people aren't just willing to just throw money at things, that that's not really worth starting a business anyway.
Okay, you have some feelings? Triggered. So I would say, what better time? We are in a huge tectonic shift in the world, and it's an exciting time to not be tied to old constructs, companies, and it's a great time for new ideas. And maybe it'll take a little bit for people to have the space for it, but I think we're on to a new age where something, especially our small business, has value of bringing some hope and encouragement to individuals in such a point of uncertainty.
No, you're right. We're ahead of the curve. I think part of the challenge is people have lasted so long white knuckling through it that they just think that that's going to be the long-term strategy, but things are getting more uncertain, more stressful. And I think those old systems are starting to break down and people are starting to look for a new way of being. And that's really what we offer is the ability to find a new way of being, whether you're in a recession or not. And that is valuable across time. You're totally right. But it is also, it's an insecurity. It's something we've talked about for sure.
Every business owner is talking about it.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, that's part of being a business person, right? Is being realistic about and aware of, anxiously aware, of the environments that you're in and how they're shifting and changing. All right, Crimson, I got another one for you.
All right.
Your favorite fluffy blanket that you love to cuddle with, you just found out is literally just a microplastic shedding machine.
Oh, gosh. I can't believe I exposed my kids. Now I need to get their blood work done all the time. I've exposed them to microplastics and I didn't let it air out. And I'm responsible for my children dying young.
Again, you did it way faster than 30 seconds, but I'm not going to ask you to continue on from there because that is literally the worst thought that any of us parents have ever had. And unfortunately, one that we have to think about. Well, you know what? I don't think that this is going to make you feel much better, but here's the truth. Since the early 2000s, they pretty much routinely find plastic in people's placentas. So microplastic were already there with them in the womb, and that doesn't make them okay, and we need to clean it up. But I do want to say that this has unfortunately been part of our landscape for a long time. And one of the reasons that I think it feels so helpless is because you get your fuzzy blanket and you're so excited about it and you love it. And then you find out it's microplastic and what do you do about it? And so part of the absurdity is we all have to embrace the fact that we are responsible as consumers to try and understand how things are being produced and to try and make the best decisions that we can as consumers. And I think there has to be like a lot of compassion that we have for ourselves right now because yikes. Did I help?
I think you helped.
No, I probably made things worse.
I mean, it's inevitable. There's a reality to it, for sure.
Yeah.
We can't get around it. Yeah, it's kind of depressing.
I think this might be the most triggering game we've ever done.
Yeah, I'm like very triggered coming out of this.
All right, give me one more and then let's
try not to go to one that's death. A long-term client, in fact, one of your favorite clients, sends an email that says, hey, something came up and we need to chat.
Oh no, they're mad at me. I've done something wrong. I'm sure that this is my fault or a mistake of mine, or that I am going to be somehow found out to be wrong or not good. This one's a little hard for me because I've had to work through this a lot professionally. My urgency is a lot more triggered in my personal life than my professional life, but I would still be like, oh, I've done something wrong. Even though, again, in my professional world, things are a lot more cut and dry as far as documentation and all that sort of stuff. So I think it would be something I would cope with better in my professional life than my personal life.
I'm probably the same in that regard. But I would look at it as, no, totally look at it the way you did. But the client just talked to their boss and they have money that they need to spend by the end of fiscal and they have a new project. ...
Yeah.
Yep. And not my strength, but I did really well.
That's a
And
good
it's
one.
needed in my timing. I just pinged it.
Your catastrophizing was on point.
It was on point.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Laurie.
All right. Well, that was a fun game. Now we're going to move into Crimson's final thoughts.
In closing out this week's episode, there's something I want to remind all of us. Humans were actually built to survive in uncertainty. To us, privileged, technology advanced modern humans, it does feel like uncertainty is a world that is unbearable. The economy changes overnight. Gas prices, technology is evolving, AI, and it just feels like headlines are constantly demanding our attention. Between our phones pinging, our watches pinging, our inboxes pinging, we're constantly overstimulated by the possibilities, predictions, our attempts to forecast the future. But if you look at our historic existence as humans, our ancestors lived through far more uncertainty than us. Think about the Neanderthal that didn't know what the weather would even be, didn't know if they were going to eat. People would just drop over dead and they wouldn't know why. They didn't even know what territory was beyond them. There were never guarantees for them about safety, survival, stability, things that we have built in as just guarantees. And so our human nervous system adapted to the comfort of certainty. But the problem is that it's not certain anymore. We're living in a time of uncertainty, unknown to many that are alive right now. And somewhere along the way, we developed the expectation that it was supposed to be fair, or we were supposed to know what was coming. Maybe some of us had great parents that gave us the most certain and predictable environment, and life was linear, but that's not the reality of our modern systems. It's not the reality of the world in which we live, and we no longer get that comfort. So the reality becomes uncertainty has always been part of the human condition, and that's why it's time to embrace the absurdity of it all. We got to stop demanding a guarantee that the world never offered us up. And we need to start believing that we can function, grow, and actually thrive even when we don't know risk are out there. So instead of dreading it, let's build the tools. Prepare yourself for whatever tomorrow brings, whether that's joy, grief, opportunity, loss. It's time to lean in, because emotional endurance isn't eliminating uncertainty. It's trusting and believing in yourself to get through it. Because at the end of the day, the only thing truly certain is uncertainty itself. So on that note, take care of yourself and each other.
That's all for this week's episode of the Emotional Endurance Movement. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow for more great coping content. And we'll see you here back next week, where you bring the feelings
and we bring the games.
Bye.
Peace out.